Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Good? Yes. So my name is Nandina Gonzas. I teach here in the Labor Studies Department at the School of Labor and Urban Studies, and I'm delighted to introduce you to one of our concluding panels of the conference, which serves, I think, as a great segue into our afternoon strategy workshops. On this stage sits a powerful group of working class strategists and movement builders who are leading new organizing efforts on ever-changing terrain. I want to begin by grounding this conversation in some words from our late movement elder, Saladin Muhammad, who was a longtime international representative of the United Electrical Workers and a steadfast internationalist, I might add, who helped found Black Workers for Justice in the wake of the 1979 Greensboro Massacre, which itself laid the groundwork for founding and building the UE's mighty statewide North Carolina Local 150. The quote I want to draw on from Brother Muhammad is as follows. He says, "We've got to see that as the crisis deepens, there are going to be all kinds of struggles and fightbacks that we have to be a part of. But the problem has been that we enter them and lose the focus on our bigger strategy. New directions are often shaped by these struggles if there is no strategic program that anchors and guides our work. This has been a weakness because the fight back has been a protest against injustice and not a struggle for power. It's not so easy, but we have to go into these struggles with more than simply a hope to achieve the immediate objective. How do we try to reshape power relationships to give more power to the people? When we stop just protesting injustice, we can use these struggles to reposition our movement and get into a more offensive posture. We are beginning to understand and practice the difference between struggle for reform and the struggle for rightful change." End quote. Brother Muhammad said this in 2013, just a year after founding the Southern Workers' Assembly right outside the Democratic National Convention that was happening in Charlotte at the time. Recall that this was the post-Occupy moment, the early days of Fight for 15. We were on the precipice of the revolt in Ferguson after the police execution of Michael Brown and the mass protests here in New York after the police murder of Eric Garner. The social and economic crisis that Brother Muhammad referred to a little over a decade ago only deepened with the political crisis that ensued at the national stage with the establishment's hypersensitivity to efforts at substantive progressive shift in the Democratic Party on one hand, and its growing accommodation to Trump's takeover of the Republican Party and federal government on the other. With the mass organized abandonment, as Ruthie Gilmore would say, that marked state responses to the pandemic, with the repression of movements for abolition and decolonization. And on this note, I join my union, the Professional Staff Congress, in condemning CUNY's use of NYPD Strategic Response Group to violently disperse student protesters at Brooklyn College yesterday. It is in this context of political crisis that we have seen greater sections of the labor movement say that we can't wait for gradual changes from the political establishment, as Dr. Campos noted earlier today. We must build mass-coordinated and disruptive actions, and this political shift is anchored in a sharpening of strategic analysis around working-class formation in sectors like logistics and in regions like the South. Brother Muhammad consistently emphasized that the South was a strategic site of investment for capital, and he saw the labor movement move in the direction of this analysis with high-profile organizing drives in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which he ultimately was not able to see win their drive, Canton, Mississippi, and Bessemer, Alabama. A decade ago, who would have thought that the first NLRB election at an Amazon warehouse in the United States would be in the South? That the first successful election would be on Staten Island? that the Amazon worker struggle in the South has persisted in Brother Muhammad's home base of North Carolina. Who saw this coming? Well, I suspect the folks on this panel did to some degree, as organizers embedded in these communities who believe in the capacity of the working class to organize and have committed their lives to doing so. Their efforts are opening the space to discuss the kind of strategic program that Brother Muhammad called for, and we are honored to have them share some of their insights with us today. So, without further ado, let me introduce our panelists. Sultana Hussein is the recording secretary of Amazon Labor Union IBT Local 1. She spent 4 years at JFK 8 Amazon Fulfillment Center in Staten Island, training, mentoring, and supporting thousands of coworkers before being fired by Amazon in retaliation for her organizing, but they didn't manage to get rid of her. Reverend Ryan Brown is a pastor and co-founder and current president of Carolina Amazonians United for Solidarity and Empowerment, also known as CAUSE. Finally, Sherman Henry is the director of the Labor Institute for Advancing Black Strategists at Clark Atlanta University, housed in the Du Bois Center for Southern Studies and Public Policy. Formerly a custodian and rank-and-file union activist in his unions at Miami-Dade Public Schools, he became president of ASME Local 1184 in 1995 and led the union for 21 years. So we truly have a wealth of experiences. Sultana and Rev Ryan, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Amazon is not merely a tech company. Amazon is a system that is shaping the future of labor, the structure of our economy, and the strength of our democracy. What began as an online bookstore has morphed into a global empire, strangling competition, draining off public wealth, and surveillance of both consumers and workers. So let us be clear in our analysis. Amazon is not simply a successful business. It is a corporate empire, an institution that has amassed power through the systematic erosion of fair competition, the capture of public resources, and the exploitation of labor on a global scale. Amazon is the architect of our collective surrender built over decades, brick by brick, on the backs of workers we were taught not to see. We are told that it's innovation, that it's genius, but what kind of genius requires subsidies from the public to deepen private wealth? What kind of innovation silences the voices of those who make its very existence possible? Jeff Bezos, we are told, played the long game. But the game has always been the same: crush the small, control the flow, take more than you can give, and call it progress. And who builds or who powers this empire? It is not the so-called tech genius or billionaire or CEO. It is 1.5 million workers, warehouse workers, drivers, coders, whose labor is invincible but not indispensable. The speed and convenience Amazon boasts, it is bought with broken hearts, broken backs, burned out minds, and stolen time. This is not innovation. This is domination. This is capitalism dressed in code, exploiting labor while preaching disruption. And as Black radical tradition teaches us, when exploitation wears a new face, we must still call it by its old name: injustice. And like the prophets of old and the prophetic voices of today, we must ask, what kind of society allows one man to amass obscene wealth while essential workers can't even take a bathroom break? What kind of economy rewards extraction over equity? The story of Amazon is not a success story. It is a warning. Let me tell you the truth, straight and with no chaser. Amazon did not rise to power because it was brilliant. It rose because it was brutal. It did not build its empire on innovation. It built it on the broken backs of working class people, especially black people, brown people, and immigrants. The very folks America has always used up, thrown away, and tried to forget. But God sees and we remember. We're talking about 1.5 million workers worldwide, over 1 million right here in the so-called land of the free. That's more than UPS, FedEx, and the entire American auto industry combined. Don't get it twisted. This ain't just about some corporation tucked away in sleepy Seattle. This is about a system, a predatory system, a system built to keep the poor working faster, harder, and cheaper so that the rich can get richer, sit higher, and get fatter. Amazon runs one of the most advanced logistic networks in human history. But let me ask you, what good is advanced technology if it tightens our chains instead of breaking our chains? What kind of progress watches your every move, times your every breath, and turns your body into a barcode? They call it efficiency. I call it, for what I see it, high-tech plantation logic. When you're skipping bathroom breaks to avoid getting fired, you're not free. When you give birth in a warehouse bathroom because there's no paid maternity leave, you're not free. When your body breaks down at 35 years old from lifting 50-pound boxes every 30 seconds and you get fired instead of help, you're not free. And when your badge shuts off without warning and nobody tells you why, you're not free. And who does this system crush the most? The ones it has always crushed: black workers, brown workers, immigrants, and where I'm from, po folks. They build warehouses in our communities. They saturate them with surveillance. They poison our air. They pollute our water, wreck our bodies, and then dare to act like we ought to be grateful for that job. Now listen, they've spent billions on automation, but the truth is that they still need us. Not robots, us, human labor, black labor, brown labor, queer labor, trans labor, cheap labor. They need us. The labor of hands, hearts, minds that machines can't mimic. But instead of honoring that, they try to automate us, to turn workers into parts of a machine. That's not dignity, that's domination. This is not the future of work. This is the present day theology of racial capitalism, where every technological advance is used not to set the captives free, but to extract more value from their pain. Amazon doesn't symbolize progress. It is a cathedral of exploitation, an altar to a system that sacrifices people for profit. If we're going to talk about the future of labor in these United States of America, then we need to start with those who bear its burdens, the ones who live while others lean, the ones who die so each CEOs can fly. Amazon is not just a company, it is the blueprint of 21st century capitalism, and what happens in its warehouses is not a side story, it is the main event.
Thank you, Reverend. And the stakes of the main event go far beyond Amazon's walls. What happens inside those warehouses don't stay there. It spills outward, shaping labor standards across industries, borders, and generations. If Amazon is the blueprint, then we need to expose the fine print, the brutal details of how this system functions, who it harms most, and why resisting it is essential for all of us. Amazon's labor model is not just reshaping work within its own warehouses. In a race to the bottom, it is establishing a global precedent for labor conditions. Employers across all industries are observing Amazon's methods, which include monitoring every worker's movement, enforcing discipline through automated systems, and maximizing productivity by treating workers as expendable. The result is the normalization of job insecurity, workplace surveillance, and physically punishing conditions, not just for Amazon workers, but for millions of others pushed to keep up with the Amazon standard. Amazon's model disproportionately harms the most marginalized, as Rev Ryan said. Amazon's lowest paid warehouse workers are overwhelmingly Black, brown, and immigrant. and they are systematically denied opportunities for advancement, no matter how well they understand the processes and the warehouse, no matter how long they've worked there or how clearly they demonstrate leadership. Instead of rewarding internal experience, Amazon routinely hires managers from outside the company, frequently white college-educated individuals working at their first job. This deliberate divide reinforces a racialized and class-based hierarchy in the workplace. Those who do the heaviest, most dangerous jobs are those with the least decision-making power. And meanwhile, those tasked with enforcing speed and surveillance and production targets and disciplining the workforce for not meeting them are insulated from the conditions that they impose. It's not simply a byproduct of the system. It's a strategic choice that Amazon makes that ensures exploitation and division remain the status quo. And in this structure, racial capitalism isn't incidental, it's foundational. Women and gender-oppressed workers bear the brunt of Amazon's extractive labor model. In many warehouses, women make up a substantial portion of the workforce. At JFK8, it's probably the majority. And a significant number are mothers who have to balance caregiving with the physically demanding and inflexible job. Harassment on the job is not uncommon, and Amazon repeatedly fails to protect workers from hostile environments, and pregnant workers are especially vulnerable. Many are denied legally required accommodations, such as lighter duties or additional breaks, and are pushed onto unpaid leave when they can no longer meet those productivity expectations, which living paycheck to paycheck, that's not a real option. So Amazon's refusal to make even minimal accommodations, it exposes how little the company has for the well-being of those who keep the warehouses running. It's a model that not only deepens gender inequality, it devalues caregiving, it punishes reproductive labor, and it reinforces a corporate system that's putting profit before human life. So challenging Amazon's labor practices is about a lot more than improving conditions inside the workplace. It's really about defending the future of work itself. Unless we organize to resist and reverse this, Amazon will continue to define what it means to be a worker in the 21st century. And that's why this fight is not just about better jobs. It's about building a world where working class people, especially the most exploited, don't just survive but lead. And if Amazon is allowed to define the future of work, our silence becomes consent to that. But when we organize, when we stand together, we're not just challenging it, we're reclaiming power over the future ourselves. Thank you.
Modern economies may change their clothes, but the skeleton of exploitation often remains the same. Beneath the shifting shapes of industry lie what labor historian John Womack calls strategic positions. Those points in labor where chain, where work, regardless of its skill label, holds the whole economy machine together. When labor at these crucial junctures halts, the system doesn't bend and it breaks. And when that break occurs in an industry, that props up the global economy. The tremors are felt everywhere, from Wall Street to warehouse floors, from boardrooms to kitchen tables across the world. Amazon is one such modern-day Babylon. It operates with technological precision, a digital empire built on just-in-time logistics, where every package is tracked, but every worker is strained. Its system is sleek, fast, and ruthlessly efficient, but it's also a fragile system. What looks like innovation is at its core a tightly wounded chain stretched thin by the relentless pursuit of profit over people. And like Pharaoh's economy of old, it demands more bricks with less straw. This is where the workers come in not as cogs in the machine, but as prophets in steel-toed boots and warehouse badges. These are the new Israelites laboring under surveillance and pressure, yet strategically positioned at the global supply chain. At air hubs, at fulfillment centers, at sortation lines, their hands move commerce and it moves culture. Their labor sustains nations. Their disruption can transform those nations. Just as steel, coal, and auto workers in the last century leveraged their power to birth the New Deal and bend the arc of labor history toward justice, Amazon workers today stand at a similar Red Sea moment. We are not simply fighting for better wages. We are bearing witness against the corporate empire. We are not just organizing shift. We are organizing a shifting of power. Our struggle is not about rights on the job, but about righteousness in the economy. This is the gospel truth. When the least of these rise, the mighty are made to reckon. Amazon's massive scale may look unshakable, but it trembles at the sound of organized labor, at the cry for dignity, the demand for democracy, and the refusal to be treated as disposable. The question is no longer whether Amazon's power can be challenged. The question is whether working people, backed by a movement that knows justice is sacred, will rise to do it. And the answer is already echoing from warehouse floors to picket lines, from New York to the Carolinas. Yes, we will build power. Yes, we will strike fear in Goliath's heart. Yes, we will refuse to bow to economic pharaohs. Amazon's workers are lighting the way toward a new exodus, a new freedom, and a future where labor is not merely endured, but is honored as holy.
So the question isn't, can Amazon be challenged? We already are. From Staten Island, New York to Raleigh, North Carolina, Amazon workers are organizing, walking out, and building real power on the shop floor. We're fighting for our dignity, yes, but we're also building a broader movement to confront corporate greed, racial capitalism, and authoritarian control over our lives. And to understand where we're headed, you've got to know where we've been, because the Amazon labor movement didn't start overnight. It's been built through struggle, sacrifice, and the courage of workers who have refused to stay silent. So Ryan and I are going to walk you through a little bit of that history. So today, union density in the US private sector is just 6%. So it's the lowest it's been in a century. And right at the center of this crisis is Amazon, a behemoth built on the backs of massive disposable workforce, where low pay, injury, and burnout are just a part of the job. And for years, Amazon workers like myself were invisible, treated like machines, replaceable, forgotten. And then the pandemic hit, and everything changed. While the rest of the world was told to stay home, we were forced into warehouses with no real protections, working shoulder to shoulder as COVID tore through our buildings. I started working at JFK 8 actually in May 2020, which is the same month I graduated college, because there's literally no other jobs. And so we were suddenly called essential, but treated as expendable, and many of my coworkers paid with their lives. And we still don't know to this day how many Amazon workers died during the pandemic. Amazon refused to release those infection numbers for months. And when they finally did in late 2020, they admitted to over 20,000 cases confirmed, but that's almost certainly a undercount. Meanwhile, the company was slow to notify us of outbreaks in our departments, denied us basic protective gear while we were shipping it out to the rest of the world. But amid that crisis, something did shift. For many Amazon workers, the pandemic became a turning point in our political and class consciousness. I know it was for me. The label of essential is more than a euphemism. It affirmed what workers already knew deep down, which is we're the ones who make the system run. Our labor, long undervalued and ignored, was suddenly recognized as critical to the functioning of the entire economy and society. This recognition sparked not just outrage, but organizing. So what followed was a wave of protests, walkouts, and whistleblowing from within the warehouse, led by workers demanding safety, dignity, and respect. These actions laid the groundwork for what would become the Amazon Labor Union, the first successful union election at an Amazon facility in the United States. That victory didn't come easy. In the lead up to the election, Amazon launched a multi-million-dollar union busting campaign designed to intimidate and demoralize us. The company hired highly paid anti-union consultants, some of them making 10 times more than we were in a day, basically to target and surveil organizing. And we were forced into captive audience meetings, mandatory sessions where Amazon management and these consultants spread misinformation and fear and anti-union propaganda. 3 years later, the NLRB ruled that these meetings were a violation of federal labor law, but that basically just confirmed what we already knew, which is their tactics are coercive and illegal. They don't care about the law. They only care about their bottom line. Despite everything, JFK workers prevailed. That election was a clear indication that we believe in fighting together rather than fighting alone. We want Amazon to negotiate with us collectively, and we formed the Amazon Labor Union to ensure we have the power to protect one another and fight back. That win was more than a spark. It was a warning shot to the billionaires that we're coming for what's ours. Winning an election is only the beginning, is what we realized. What became clear in the aftermath was that without democratic infrastructure, member participation, and clear systems of accountability, it would be impossible to confront Amazon's power or secure a union contract. As workers, we were building our own union in real time, under pressure from both external attacks and internal disorganization. In response, in 2023, I joined with other rank-and-file workers to form the Democratic Reform Caucus, which was a collective committed to democratizing our union, strengthening transparency, and returning power to the membership. Meanwhile, Amazon's union busting hadn't let up. It only escalated. Since our election victory, the company had intensified its retaliation against worker leaders, arbitrary write-ups, terminating organizers. I was fired myself for organizing, and Amazon collaborated with law enforcement multiple times to union bust. I've been arrested twice in the last year for asserting my right to organize. Through coordinated campaigns of surveillance and intimidation, Amazon regularly, every day, violates our freedoms of speech and assembly. In 2024, Amazon took it a step further by filing a federal lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the NLRB, which is the agency tasked with protecting workers' rights. This wasn't just a legal maneuver, it was an attempt to dismantle the entire framework of labor rights in the US. Or in other words, Amazon is trying to destroy the very concept of a union. These acts of repression are deliberate. Amazon is sending a message: if you fight back, you'll be punished. But we keep sending our own message back, which is we're not afraid and we're not going anywhere. In 2024, we affiliated with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, aligning ourselves with a labor organization capable of providing crucial legal, organizational, and strategic resources. And then 1 month after that, our union held our first democratic leadership elections, and for the first time, workers at JFK 8 chose the officers of their own union. And I was honored to be elected as recording secretary alongside an incredible leadership team that's really dedicated to building a real worker-led union. 6 months ago, JFK 8 workers escalated our contract campaign by participating in a national ULP strike, the first coordinated strike action led by Amazon workers in this country. That strike was not symbolic, it was a strategic escalation and a message to Amazon that we're done waiting for them to meet their legal obligation to come to the bargaining table. For months, workers organized internally. We prepared each other for the risks and responsibilities of a collective action of this magnitude. And on December 21st, just 4 days before Christmas, which is Amazon's most profitable time of the year, hundreds of workers at JFK 8 walked off on the job, which was, it was an incredible show of resistance, and an outpouring of community supporters joined us on the picket line, an inspiring display of solidarity, and it really just affirmed what we already knew, that the fight against Amazon is more than just a labor struggle. We all have a role to play. So our strike drew national attention to the reality inside Amazon's warehouses and marked a real turning point in our campaign. It demonstrated to everyone, to Amazon, to the world, but especially to ourselves, that we're capable of coordinated, disciplined, and sustained collective action. And today, in 2025, our central focus is building a majority structure of union leaders and activists inside JFK 8. That's why last week, on May Day, we launched the biggest issue campaign we have ever had around safety. The name of our campaign is We Are Not Robots. Every Amazon worker knows the job is dangerous by design. Quite literally, this campaign is about fighting for our right to live. But it's also about strategy. We're using it to build deep structures across JFK 8, training stewards, growing our shop floor committees, department by department, shift by shift, so that we can activate a supermajority of workers. There's 5,000 at JFK 8, and build the power needed to strike again. And we know we're not alone. What we're building at JFK 8 is part of something much bigger. It's a growing movement of Amazon workers from across the country who are organizing to take back power on the shop floor, from New York to North Carolina. We're connecting the dots, we're sharing tactics, and we're laying the groundwork for a national labor movement. So to talk more about how this fight is growing in the South, pass it to Ryan.
In this new Gilded Age 2.0, where greed wears a suit and oppression signs the checks, the South stands as sacred ground in the struggle between Pharaoh's palace and the people's pain. And our story is a chapter in that sacred, ongoing fight for freedom. Cause was not born in comfort. Cause was born in the fire, forged in a pandemic that pulled the veil off a system designed to break the backs of the very people it depends on. When the world shut down, we showed up. When the rich locked down in luxury, we walked into warehouses with courage. While executives zoomed from mansions, we choked on toxic air in warehouses that reeked with pain, human suffering. And when Amazon refused to warn us, refused to protect us, refused to see our humanity, we stood up in holy defiance. I remember turning to Mary Hill, who we call Ma Mary, an elder, a saint seasoned in struggle. She looked me in the eye and spoke a truth as old as America is itself. This system ain't broken, son. It was built this way, but we are not powerless. And from that sacred moment, everything shifted. We did not wait for deliverance to drop from the sky. We became the deliverers from whom we had been waiting on. We organized in the spirit of Harriet, in the fire of Fannie Lou, in the resistance of John Brown, in the faith of Martin and Malcolm. We formed cause, not with gold, but with grit, not with legacy, but with love, not with institutional power, but with people power. And let me make it plain. In North Carolina, where labor laws are weak and corporate power is fortified like the walls of Jericho. That ain't no small feat. In January of 2024, we made a plan. We said that we would file for an election, not just to win, but to witness, to testify to the power of the people, to summon the spirit of our ancestors, to bear the burden and to bless the struggle. But Amazon had another agenda. They delayed, they distracted, they deceived, they poured millions into manipulation. They launched fear campaigns in every break room. They sent propaganda like wolves in HR clothing. They called the police, they surveilled. They tried to scare the holy out of us. They arrested us for giving out free food to our co-workers who did not even have enough food for Thanksgiving. They arrested Sister Sultana before the election, a prophetess of the people, on bogus charges. So let us be real. This wasn't just union busting. That was just Jim Crow in a corporate suit. That was the same old demon in a new disguise. But hear me and hear me in my very best voice. Though they tried to crush our union, they could not crucify our spirits. We are still here. We're still organizing. We're still feeding. We're still building a new world at the edge of an old one. And Amazon knows it. That is why they are building fences and gates and guard shacks right now as we speak in North Carolina. Not because we bring the chaos, but we bring vision. A righteous vision, a holy vision, a vision where warehouses become sanctuary, a vision where we're not waiting for our pie in the sky. We're wanting to bring pie into the break rooms now, where labor is not a curse, but it's a calling, where the last shall be first and the exploited rise as the empowered. Let me say it plain. The election was never the end. It was the altar we built to light the fire. It was the trumpet before the march. Amazon lied, they intimidated and manipulated workers, but we ain't new to this. We are true to this. We have seen Pharaoh before. We have seen Babylon. We have read the prophets, and we know this. Pharaoh never lets the people go without a fight. So we fight with faith, with fellowship. This fight ain't just about a paycheck. It's about dignity. It's about declaring that black lives matter, brown lives matter, queer lives matter, trans lives matter, poor lives matter, working class folks of any colors' lives matter. This is about taking the tools of Pharaoh and building the kingdom of God in the South. And while some unions choose safety over solidarity, we choose to walk by faith and not by fear. We choose to build a worker-led movement rooted in faith, fueled by fire, driven by divine purpose, because we believe that the working class must lead the emancipation of the working class. So let me speak in the key of freedom. We don't mourn, we mobilize. We don't panic, we prophesy. We don't retreat, we rise. Yes, we lost the vote, but we gain a deeper truth. We gain each other. We gain resolve. We gain a vision. Amazon built fences. We built fellowship. They posted guards. We posted up in the spirit. They tried to silence us, but the stone is rolled away now, and the movement lives. And as long as cause beats in the hearts of workers in the Carolinas and in the Jim Crow South, Amazon will never know peace. Because we are not done, we are not defeated, we're just getting started.
Thank you, Reverend. And you said it best. This system isn't just unjust. It's designed that way. And when we organize against it, when we step into our power, we aren't just resisting, we're rebuilding. And that kind of transformation can't happen without one thing. That's real democracy. Democracy isn't easy. If it were, every organization would be democratic. But it's not. Choosing democracy, choosing transparency, participation, active decision-making, accountability, shared leadership, it's something that we actively commit to every single day. At ALU, We're learning that building a democratic union is not a one-time task. It's an ongoing process of learning, of conflict, of growth. And we've learned that it's not optional. Without it, we won't win. Without it, we won't survive. We've learned the hard way that that's the case. Because the only way we're going to force Amazon to the bargaining table is through active participation and engagement of the rank and file. Our power comes from below. That's why our strategy is rooted in building a strong steward network, developing worker-led collective action, and making sure members are directly involved in both structure and strategy of our union. As a leader of my union, I see my role as helping every single worker recognize their own power, not to just improve their immediate conditions, but to take on the entire system. So how do we overcome the challenges of building a democratic union? In my experience, it comes down to one thing, and that's trust. It's building real trust. Organizing is about building relationships rooted in dependability, honesty, following through with what you say, mutual respect. It's about showing up and recognizing each other for the roles that each of us play something different in this, but we all are needed in this team, and it's important that we recognize that every day. So mistakes happen, disagreements and debates are definitely a part of the process. We're writing the playbook ourselves. There's no real roadmap for organizing Amazon, but it's really how we handle those conflicts, how we choose to resolve them, that determines the strength of our union and how we come out of it on the other side. At the end of the day, we are unified by a common goal, by a shared vision and mission of a different world, and we know we're the ones who have to build it. So that's why worker-led unions like ours are not just surviving, they're showing the way forward.
Let me be real for one quick moment. You can't fight a 21st century Goliath with a 20th century playbook. And Amazon, that ain't just any employer, it's a digital empire, it's a surveillance state, it's a logistics lord. It's moving fast, it's breaking rules, it's rewriting the terms of power. And to confront that kind of beast, you need a union that's just as bold, just as fast, and 10 times as rooted in the people. That's why independent unions like CAWS, rank and file unions aren't just an option, they are a necessity. See, traditional unions, and I may get in trouble for saying this, and God bless their history, often moves like institutions and not movements. They got bureaucracy where there should be boots on the ground. They got negotiation tables, but not enough organizing crews. And too often they're playing defense while Amazon is running a no-huddle offense across the entire globe. Amazon ain't just busting unions, they're building systems to neutralize them before they're born. They got anti-union consultants, high-tech heat maps, and algorithms that sniff out organizing like bloodhounds. And when the fight's that fierce, you don't need a union that plays by the rules. You need a union that rewrites the rules. Independent unions are nimble, rooted, and dangerous to the status quo, exactly what this moment in our time demands. Why? Because they're built from the bottom, made by workers, for workers, not staff or distant headquarters. They don't just talk about democracy, they practice democracy, committees, decisions, campaigns, all led by the very people catching boxes and breaking backs. That kind of leadership can't be bought, it can't be outsourced, and it can't be intimidated because it's been forged in the fire of warehouse floors and stolen wages. Independent unions build power, not just process. They aren't afraid to be loud, unapologetic, and disruptive. They meet workers where they are, not with pamphlets, but with purpose. They understand that the goal isn't just conditions at Amazon, it's to confront Amazon as a system, as a symbol of unchecked corporate power. This is bigger than a contract. This is about control, about dignity, about liberation. And so let the old unions keep their seats at the table and independent unions are building new tables. We're rewriting our own history on our own terms. And in a time like this, when the empire is global and the exploitation is global, we don't need tradition, and we don't need to get caught in the tragic traps of tradition. We need transformation, and the workers themselves are the ones who are bringing that transformation. In the warehouse economy of our day, exemplified by giants like Amazon, we are witnessing a sophisticated reconfiguration of the plantation. It is dressed in metrics and mobility, but underneath lies the same old logic of exploitation. Workers are not just working, they are being disciplined, divided by design. These divisions, racial, verbal, generational, geographic, are not incidental. They are structural, they are strategic. And capitalism in its late modern form thrives not merely on surplus value, but on segregated labor and fractured communities. And let the record show, Amazon doesn't just move packages, it moves power. It extracts labor while erasing solidarity, isolating workers by shift, by badge, by background. And here lies the deeper, more crises. A system that manipulates difference to mute dissent. This is not just economic violence, it is spiritual warfare. It is what Dr. King called the thingfication of human beings, the reduction of people to parts, to functions, to numbers on a spreadsheet. That's why organizing in such a context cannot be neutral, it cannot be shallow, it must be political, moral, and yes, it must be prophetic. The task is not to pretend we all believe the same thing or come from the same place. The task is to start with shared conditions: the heat of the warehouse, the weight of the quota, the chill of surveillance, the trace of those conditions to the structures that sustain them. As W.E.B. Du Bois taught us, liberation begins with the awakening of the double conscience, seeing the world as it is and daring to imagine it otherwise. Our role is not to dictate belief, but to awaken analysis, to help workers connect what they feel to what they face and ultimately what they must fight. And let's be clear, this means naming the source. The enemy is not the fellow worker who looks different, sounds different, votes different. The enemy is the system that profits from that difference. The enemy is Amazon's surveillance state, its wage suppression, its union busting machine. In the words of Howard Thurman, we must ask what happens to the disheartened when they are told their suffering is forever. We must give them not just hope, but tools to challenge the roots of that suffering. This is the intersection of theology and labor. This is the gospel of justice. It is Harriet's gospel. It's Ella Baker's gospel. It's Jesus' gospel. A gospel that overturns tables and topples empires, because we believe, as Fannie Lou Hamer declared, that nobody's free until everybody is free.
So I've come to understand that this work is as much a process of political education as it is organizing. When I talk to JFK 8 workers at our union hall or out at our bus stop, I see the same patterns over and over. It's people blaming themselves for their exhaustion, competing with each other for scraps, feeling like they're powerless to change anything. Raising class consciousness means helping workers unlearn the dominant narratives they've internalized, that exploitation is a personal failure, that workplace competition is natural, or that power only exists at the top. Apathy is not a personal failure. It's the biggest obstacle we deal with every day. Organizing, it's fear and it's apathy. But we don't blame each other. These are the stories we've been taught by the system that wants us divided and defeated. These beliefs are not accidental. They're products of a proto-fascist system that thrives on undermining solidarity and legitimizing corporate dominance, and convincing workers to really identify with the very forces that oppress us. So that's where Paulo Freire's idea of a pedagogy of liberation comes in, so I'm not a theorist. But I really live this every single day. As a leader of my union, I see my role as helping workers recognize that what happens when we struggle together, when we fight for better conditions, and we start seeing ourselves not as victims, but as agents of change, that's power. That's where we build real power. And we're building it by engaging the undecided, the skeptical, the disillusioned, and honestly, sometimes even those who are holding reactionary views. Not with judgment, but with real patience and strategy, because all of us are capable of this. And most people don't arrive at those views out of hate. They're trying to survive in a system that gives them no voice. And our task is to create the conditions for this transformation, this personal transformation, through relationships, through organizing, through shared resistance. And I'll say clearly, we're not building class unity in spite of our differences, we're building it through them. That's how we connect the dots between everything. And that's how we move forward from just surviving to real organizing, and from despair and apathy and hopelessness to real power.
A democratic labor movement that truly stands against fascism must not merely whisper, but shout its allegiance to anti-racism, to immigrant justice, and to international solidarity. These are not side issues. No, they are the soul of economic justice. You cannot claim to fight for the worker and ignore the weight of the change that bind Black, brown, and immigrant labor across this nation and around this globe. You see, corporations like Amazon do not operate on an island of innocence. They are not bystanders. They are beneficiaries of a system soaked in the blood of racialized capitalism, fortified by global materialism, and lubricated by the forced displacement of the world's poor. Amazon's billions are built on the backs of the broken down workers whose labor is cheapened, whose rights are denied, whose humanity is suppressed. And let us not miss this truth. Those same systems are alive and well right here and right now. Amazon warehouses are not just workplaces, they are pressure cookers for injustice, filled with folks who are being oppressed, whose voices are often silenced, and whose dignity is daily demeaned. But there is a movement rising in places like North Carolina. Hope is marching in the footsteps of history. The organizing led by cause is not just about contracts and conditions, it's about conscience. It's a continuation of the Black freedom struggle, a resurrection of the prophetic power that once echoed through the cotton fields and still rings from the red clay of the South. These workers, we are not just up against a company, we are facing a down political machine built on voter suppression, poverty wages, and centuries of anti-Black oppression. And so we say organizing is not an option. Racial justice is not a footnote. It is the foundation. What Cause is doing is more than labor organizing. It is liberation theology in action. It is the modern day Moses movement, demanding dignity in Pharaoh's warehouse, demanding safety in the land of risk and retaliation, demanding justice where there has only been profit. This is a holy fight. This is sacred ground, and we will not stop until justice rolls down like waters and the righteousness like a mighty stream.
So at ALU, we've advanced an explicitly immigrant-centered approach to organizing. I'm a Bangladeshi woman, daughter of immigrants. I see fear in workers' eyes when ICE is mentioned, but I also see the quiet power that it takes to organize in spite of that fear. So we've published, our Immigrant Defense Committee, we've published a 10-point immigrant justice program demanding language access, an end to retaliation based on status, and a full stop to any collaboration with ICE. And these are not just symbolic demands. They come from the real-life needs of our multilingual, multi-status workforce. I also want to uplift the students at CUNY SLU who are organizing right now for basic protections from ICE and for more democratic governance on their own campus. Their fight is our fight. And our fight is global. In 2023, ALU stood with tech workers and Palestinian rights organizations to oppose Amazon's $1.2 billion contract with the Israeli military. It's called Project Nimbus. We issued a public statement, we walked out, and we demanded an end to Amazon's role in apartheid, occupation, and genocide. Because we know the same technologies Amazon uses to monitor us in the warehouse are being exported to wage war and surveillance abroad. To stand against fascism here at home, we must stand against empire everywhere, and that brings me to the heart of what I want to leave you with. We're about to wrap up. So as isolating as that warehouse can be, it's tough, it's dark, it feels relentless when you're there at 3 a.m. On a 12-hour shift. But when you're talking to coworkers of every nationality, religion, gender, age, political leaning, ability, like all of that, you realize something really powerful. We're not just trading stories, we're actually building something together. We're forging a global movement rooted in solidarity, not the kind that erases our differences, but the kind that sees in those differences the key to our collective liberation. If Amazon is the epicenter of 21st century oppression, then organizing Amazon is our act of defiance and our path to liberation. The labor movement we're fighting for is not just about contracts or wages. It's about redefining what work means and who it serves. It's about confronting every force, racism, capitalism, patriarchy, colonialism, state violence, that devalues our life and divides our class because they're all faces of the same system. That's the kind of labor movement we're building, and we don't plan on stopping until we win. I'm gonna just end on this picture right here. So Ryan, do you remember taking this picture? So this is from like 3 months ago. A bunch of us from JFK went down to North Carolina to support them right before their election. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But this part was good.
Turn on the video, the YouTube video. Yeah.
Is it this? Okay, great.
I've had the pleasure and the blessing of calling this place home for over 25 years because the leaders in our movement infuse something in this soil.
There are a lot of people who are out there who are cobbling things together, trying to make it work, trying to figure it out, who have the politics, who have the relationships or what have you, but oftentimes they might be the only black person on the floor, if not in the building. And so you can only have but so much power if you are the only. You always need to come home, and you need your people.
Our mission for the Du Bois Policy Center is very, very clear. It is to interrogate, reframe, and develop public policy through research, community engagement, advocacy that improves the quality of life of African Americans and Africans in the American and the global South.
And so Smiley started cobbling together this concept, not just of what does it take for people to have their own expertise, to be validated in a space that is beyond contestation, to have the skill and ability and will to make their own way in a world that doesn't want them. Because whether you want us or not, you need us.
One of the few moments in history where it's been recognized that some of the most militant worker actions are happening in the southern region. And we can't simply watch from the sidelines as passive observers. You know, they actually need our strategic interventions to ensure that their efforts are going to amount to more than the sum of their individual fights.
We're all here for you to really inaugurate this journey that you guys are about to begin.
So there's a few things about being a man of integrity. As we started to kind of reimagine and relaunching this APSI movement.
Oh, this is so important because, you know, black workers are the essential workers of the economy here in the South. It's important to build up a group of leaders that can actually go out and lead the people who are the most essential in these industries.
We are so excited to be engaged with Jobs with Justice and the Advancing Black Strategist Initiative. This work matters because the legacy of Clark Atlanta University is to create capacity in others to lead for justice.
The things that are happening in the South that people who are working against us are doing to us is only empowering us and building capacity.
So this is a moment in history that will set the standard for the changes that are up ahead. We have a room full of academia, we have a room full of revolutionaries, we have a room full of those persons that understand the critical moment that we're in right now in 2024.
This project is about building, strengthening, transforming American democracy.
It's going to be important so we can build black leaders who are able to really make the connections in their communities and in their workplaces, most importantly, to be able to really make the changes in the future that we want.
Big dreams make big change. If you want something significant to shift, if you want to change things at the level of systems, at the level of the structures that they're built on, you have to dream big.
Okay, so I want to, give a round of applause again for the Amazon workers. That was very good work there. And quickly kind of build from their movement, but more specifically, the themes of this whole conference speaks to the reimagining labor. How do we build a multiracial democracy that is interconnected to the economy? Communities, unions, rethinking collective bargaining through community benefits agreements, and coalition partners that are not always in the House of Labor, constituency groups. And so I want to kind of take a few minutes out to introduce Kelvin, who was in the documentary. Calvin Cullen, stand up, please. Sama Goldberg, who's also with the United Southern Workers, and they're organizing Waffle House workers in the South, right? So, brother, stand up as well. And I know Mariah's here, and they're going to have a session after this session. But I also want to acknowledge Josh. Yeah, no, come on, brother. The IU Pat, my guy, Downey. And they was one of the first unions that supported us in this vision that Erica Smiley, who's the executive director of Jobs with Justice, as we're now saying, okay, what is a multiracial democracy? How do we educate a population of folks who are not normally engaged in this process? How do we now bring in constituency groups and ordinary folks and build from the power that you guys had, the passion, the determination, the diligence, and what it's going to take to kind of build this democracy that is going to also empower workers, that is going to also fight back against this onslaught that we call the mega movement. and recognizing that this movement isn't new. It's just called something different now. Smiley likes to go back to Reconstruction, talking about the various aspects of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. But I'm not going to try to exactly go through all of this right now, because I actually wanted to have a conversation with you all about strategies and why we're trying to do something in the South. So here, you have a QR code, which was mentioned earlier. If you all want to kind of read up on what we're doing, you can kind of take a picture of that and sign up for some of our communications and newsletters and things that we're building. The APSI Labor Institute is also part of the APSI movement, where we recruit young black students or workers, and we bring them into our program for about 18 months, 15 months, 18 months, depending on the funding. And we give them tools that they haven't had before and allow them to understand what the labor movement is about, understand the critical theories of social movement, social justice movements, and it's an academic setting, but we also put them out in the field to work on actual campaigns that they're leading in some cases, working with veteran union leaders and against some real live oppositions like you all are hearing here with the Amazon workers. And so in the spirit of like Red was just talking, I kind of lead the program, and I kind of just think about the diligent hand and the biblical reference that the hand of the diligent will rule while the rest will be put to false labor. And one of the pictures that I like folks to think about is the right-wing folks are being very diligent about destroying us. Started out probably in the 50s, well, go back to Reconstruction, but for the purpose of this conversation, and I know we got a few minutes, we want to talk about the Southern strategy and where these more egregious working conditions were in the South and remain in the South. And then we look at kind of fast forwarding, what is their strategy for their movement? And you can see they had a state strategy. So it's not just the southern states. Look at all that red on those maps. That's what we're fighting against right now. This is why you have mega and gangsters in the White House and the Congress. And I can tell you, nobody in this room is safe. And so our goal is to make sure that we at least educate a population looking at the infrastructure of historically black colleges and universities where they have been ignored from an educational perspective and an empowerment perspective because there was no labor institutions, no labor instructions, no real understanding in the South about unions. And so we want to change those dynamics. We also run the Labor Research Action Network. It's a research arm of the National Jobs for Justice. And in 2017 at Howard University, our about 160-something activists, scholars, sought to kind of have this conversation about the underrepresentation of black strategists in the U.S. labor movement, particularly in the southern region. And part of the motivation for this is that 56% of black families reside in the South. And you all have been hearing throughout this conversation, especially with the Amazon story, a lot of the more egregious working conditions are toward black workers, whether it's Amazon and, you know, we don't talk about Walmart as much, but they're there. We don't talk about the unorganized industries and big retail, whether it's Target, et cetera. And so we want to move a conversation along the way, put resources in, galvanize the imagination of folks to say we can change these dynamics if we come together. But also coming together, I mean, we have to have some difficult conversations. And we know right now it's hard for labor to have difficult conversations just because when it comes to this mega movement, a significant amount of our membership voted for the person, but I want to say they voted for the policies. It's not like they hid what they was doing. You know, we can go back to the map and talk about Utah, as mentioned by on the first day. So we want to just kind of talk about the power of government, you know, and the attack that started long before Reagan, but he demonized government, right? Government is not for the people, something like that. It's, you know, the problems of the people is not the solution to the people. And then Grover Norquist said, well, I want government decides that I can drown it in the tub. And now you have the mega movement is just doing all kind of crazy stuff. And we have kind of like statistics and things of that nature. So part of our outreach is an educational outreach. We know the Janus decision was another blow, right, at crippling the labor movement, the private sector, and subjecting everybody, go back to that little map, to these kind of egregious policies. You heard a lot about Florida and the dismantling of collective bargaining in Florida. And so our movement kind of want to speak truth to power, and that power is also internal to the House of Labor. We got to have a real conversation about how we've been divided and how the right wing, whether it's a populist movement, they got the power, they got the resources and authority of government, and they're moving a Southern strategy that is now a national strategy. And none of us are gonna have real union density if we don't really have this kind of come to Jesus meeting, right? And so the Amazon workers, the painters, the Waffle House workers, everybody's having a real conversation about what is the future of work and how do we reimagine it. And because the UAW group, we work with them, we are now seeing the attack, and the right-wing folks are now saying, well, we're gonna stop all this organizing. We're gonna now limit local living wage ordinance. We're gonna limit organizing through penalizing corporations that acknowledge unions, when the majority of workers say we no longer want to work for those low wages, crappy working conditions, being hurt on the job. Now I'm stuck with life with this back injury. But they're now saying, well, if you do that, we're going to punish you. We're going to remove you from our grant system, and now you're going to have to deal with not only the loss of funding, but now we're going to leave you to those workers for destruction. And if we kind of think about the whole marriage between Trump and Elon, right, you got to kind of look at what is this unraveling federal government and federal workers. A lot who, if you kind of follow the narrative on CNN and all these other specials, they got buyer's remorse. So what we want to say is that, you know, we want to kind of move from like just blaming them and become more diligent in our own pursuit of happiness and economic justice. And so the Bluebird campaign was one with the steelworkers that we are proud that we had a hand in. They organized through the Biden administration, right? And I know we lost them, but the infrastructure bill helped us. But it also caused the Bluebird folks to be neutral, because the Biden administration, and at the time, Secretary of Labor Julie Su, all of us got together and we went down there and they had a different conversation about the workers in Fort Valley, Georgia. And so you can see the statistics here. One worker shared with us that he had been there for 24 years, and the $16 an hour was the same wage it was when they attempted to organize. And so now when we want to get into inequities and inequality, and the whole conversation about fight for 15. So this guy was like, I was making $16 24 years ago in that position and still paying the same amount of money. So through our Labor Institute, we're going to talk about black political education. We're going to talk about labor movement. We're going to talk about women taking lead, race, gender, and labor. We're going to have what does it take to expand collective bargaining, and we really want to talk shop about money, power, and respect. And so thank God we have supporters with the United Steelworkers, United Auto Workers, the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, United Electrical Radio and Machine Workers of America, the Laborers International Union and Allied Trade, and we have USSW, United Southern Service Workers with SEIU, and a host of others as part of our conversation and what we're trying to build in the South. And so I know I got 5 minutes, maybe 1 minute now, so I won't try to get through the rest of this. But that's what we're doing. We're saying to all of you all, the South is not totally lost. Folks are kind of angry and fed up, but we have a lot of work to do to school people. And one of the gaps we thought about is that the framework and the HBCU network is what we're going to start to build this conversation in. And it is now taking hold not only at the colleges and university in Atlanta, but we have colleges now in Texas and students in Alabama want to have a real conversation. And so I didn't get a chance to go through all of this because the folks at Amazon really was passionate, and that's the kind of movement we want and the passion that we want. So thank you all for listening.
A round of applause again for our wonderful panelists. We got a little bit of a late start, so we're just going to go just a little bit over. There's going to be coffee outside once we're done, but what I want to do is to collect just a couple questions from the floor, and we'll give you an opportunity to answer them, do any final concluding remarks, and then we'll wrap up. So any questions from the floor? We have someone riding a mic up and down the floor. Mm-hmm.
Hey there. Hello. Hey there. I wanted to both congratulate you guys for managing to organize the warehouses. I think it's a sign of hope and success in dark times. My question is, I understand there's a lot of turnover in the warehouses. How did you manage to organize effectively if there was constant turnover? What were the strategies around that?
Thank you very much. I'm going to collect 2 more questions, and then we'll have the panelists answer. And when you're asking your question, it just takes a minute for the volume to kick in, but please use your microphone so that the live stream can pick it up. We've got a question in the back over there.
Thank you. I commend the work that you're doing there. I did a lot of organizing in Chattanooga, Tennessee. First UAW campaign as well. So one of the things I've noticed being here at the urban school and labor school in the master's program, and also what I noticed very clearly when I was organizing in the South, is the inherent northern bias of unions and organizers, even Human Rights Campaign and stuff like that, sending interns and stuff like that down. What sort of things would you like to see from, because I've sat in classes where people in unions have actually said, why do we have to do anything in the South? So what would you say to them, and what would you say are your greatest needs of solidarity from the northern labor movement?
And we'll take one last question. That's all right. Okay, we've got one over here.
Thank you. I wanted to speak to the work you're doing in the South. Me personally, as a first-generation African-American, Haitian American who went to a HBCU, I did see that the lack of labor studies in the black colleges was glaring. I did master in economics, but I had to go to a white school to get that. So my question is, and I missed, probably if I missed it day one, what sparked that need or that thought process of uniting the HBCUs and using them as a cultivation ground to start that labor conversation?
Thank you for those questions. How about we start with Sherman, and then we'll go down the line, and if we can keep
Testing.
comments brief.
Sure. So kind of do a 2-for-1, both questions. I think the gap is that, one, we always talk about the egregious working conditions of black folks. And we also know that union density is about 3% in the average southern state. And so if folks up north don't think the least of us down south has impact with you, then just look at what's happening now, right? So we had to have a conversation about what has to happen differently in the House of Labor, talk to these national unions and say, look, we have to reinvest in the South, because if we continue to lose southern states, then you're going to lose the country. And guess what? It's 2025, we've lost the country. Now, there still remains hope, but that's the reason why we started to say, okay, we have to create a new pipeline for black workers, and we have to start looking at educational systems, which is why they're attacking, and there was a lot of conversation this week about those themes. And so we have to transform HBCUs because they have a stake in the game. And once we now start to empower those workers, empower those students, then we think the House of Labor would then start to understand what it's like to be in solidarity and fight a lot of the egregious policy, because like you heard in the opening statement, Utah, right? That's not necessarily a black area. So when you look at what's happening now in Florida, the dismantling of a constitutional right to organize, but they have a right to now strip you of those benefits through the legislative session. And so that's the reason why we kind of, in 2017, started to say, how do we reimagine this out? How do we now go to folks who have resources and invested interests, both in the South and just the country? And once we know folks realized the first time is when Georgia turned blue, and I would say to folks, Georgia's not blue. We just beat them. And the second time is we know what happened. So that's part of the reason why we have to invest in the South and interconnect those who up north and other places who understand unionisms, because part of our research is not just with the workers but with the students. They don't know enough about unions because 95% of their parents and things of that nature aren't under a union contract.
Okay, so I'm going to answer that question about turnover. So yeah, I mean, turnover is extremely high. It's about 150% in the warehouse. So I was a learning trainer at JFK8. I used to do onboarding, the day one orientations. I think I onboarded on average about 100 workers a week on night shift alone, and that's making up for how many people left, fired or quit in a week. So turnover is really high. It is one of our biggest challenges in organizing. I would say the way we're taking up that challenge, I think for a long time we did a lot of relational organizing. It's like casting, it's like a small group of us casting that wide net and trying to talk to as many people as possible. But like I said in the presentation, it doesn't work if you're not building real trust. And so we're trying to move towards, this is what we're doing this year actually, really move towards this structured organizing approach where we're really mapping out department by department, who knows who this web of trust of relationships, and that way as people leave, as new people come in, it's just so much easier to track that and know who's coming in, who's leaving, and I think that's how we're trying to overcome that. Ryan, did you want to add anything to that?
I think one of the things I'm thinking too with the high turnover rate, you take a little town called Garner, North Carolina. I'm from North Carolina. I'm from another town in North Carolina no one's never heard of, Waco, North Carolina. I had never heard of Garner until I moved to that side of the state. And what we were able to accomplish there, it is what a lot of larger institutions, a lot of larger unions were not able to accomplish, and we did it with very simple, building relationships. I used to be a pastor, and a pastor is a shepherd. And if the only time you smell like sheep is on Sunday, you ain't much of a shepherd. I immerse myself into organizing. I breathe it. I live it. I got the scars, the tears. Building those relationships with folks. Can I tease on you for one quick second? You take Sister Keisha here, for example. Keisha started out organizing with us, and because of miscommunication and misunderstanding, was completely angry. We had to communicate to get her back involved. But she had that fire. She knew something was fundamentally wrong with her employer, and she is organizing like hell with us now. And so for us, it's about relationship. Until the individual who was talking about, I sat in class with some folks who think that the South is just a waste of time. I'm brand new to organizing. Again, don't know nothing about it, don't have a blueprint. Only thing I could do is go back and look into my history of me understanding the South, me understanding black church people. Most of the people that I worked with were black women. They go to church, and I knew that if I could spark them, I could spark an action and some movement. That's who, and then these larger institutions, some of those folks who probably made those comments, it's one thing to have all of these theories on and on, but when your boots are on the ground, the South is very important. As this brother was saying here earlier, so how the South, a lot of history was in the South. But the South just needs someone to lead it. And where I feel that, and what I know in my heart is that the Amazon here, that's in North Carolina, we're going to lead that movement in the South. Because again, even by us getting beat with no experience, no nothing, we still did 10% better than the last union that was that tried to organize an Amazon facility on the first round.
One final comment from Sultana.
Okay, well, actually, first I want to give my shout-outs before I forget. The rest of my panels had a chance to do that. So first, shout-out to the three most important women in my life, my mom, my nanu, and my baby sister. This is their first time coming to hear me speak at something. It's usually a protest, so they don't come. And shout out to my union family over here, so Joelle and Asa. It's with you guys that, I share this vision and this mission for a better world. Grateful that you're here. So something I wanted to throw out there before we end is ALU, Amazon Labor Union, we are starting up our Solidarity membership program. Like I talked about in my presentation, this is something that really the entire movement needs to own. It's every single one of us. Like Amazon really has that much of an impact. It's the second biggest employer in this country. It's about to be the biggest. It's literally taking over everything. Like no other company you can think of compares. We all have a role to play in this. If we care about the future and if we want to take back the future. So workers are leading the fight. And so we are establishing this, it's Solidarity membership. It's how our community can support us, own this fight with us. I have some pamphlets. I'll leave them somewhere, maybe at the table outside where the coffee is or something. I don't know, if that's okay. And we're hard launching this membership program with a fundraiser party. It's going to be on June 11th. Details to be announced. You can follow our social media to know more about that.
Thank you once again to our panelists. Thank you all for being here. You can find information at registration about the strategy workshops. We have 8 workshops. You can find the room numbers and definitely grab some coffee. Thank you for your patience.